What's up, Pal League? This is Jacob Alesia with this week's Pacemaker video. We're going to be showing you how to get around Auto Club in a very quick and a very efficient manner. First things first, I'm going to go out and put in a solid qualifying lap and talk you through the points for that. The big thing to keep in mind on your qualifying laps, the rear tires feel extra cold when these tires don't have any heat in them, so be prepared to chase the back end a little bit on these laps. But the setup's pretty solid. You'll have pretty good grip all the way around. Since Auto Club is a wide and fast racetrack, going too fast through the corners and pushing on exits is going to cost you a ton of time and tire wear. So we're going to try to focus on hitting the apex of the corner a little bit later than you might think, so that we can go up and off the exit full throttle with minimal tire drag by going sideways to keep our speed high. You're carrying a lot of speed through these corners, so the car is really going to want to slide all the way out to the wall even when it feels like it's hooked up. So keep that in mind too. You got to use up all the track that you can to make your best lap time. When coming to the line, be extra careful on your restarts. Slamming on the gas, the car really veers to the right. The way the suspension's set up, it's going to sit back on those rear springs, and they're real soft to try to get traction out of these corners. So you really start to wiggle around. So don't think just because we're starting in second gear and things are going to be a little less aggressive that you're going to not have to drive the car. Alright, we're back at Auto Club running some race laps. Before we even get out on the track, there is a few things that I would like to suggest. The brake bias in the car is a very conservative setup on the car. So if you want to knock that back a few percentages, I'm running it at -3% on the base setup, and that feels like where I would like it to be and to be able to adjust it. So move it 3% back in the setup screen and then play with it in car as the setup changes. That way you can also go to +3% for your pit road entry, getting you some time in the race. So the setup for the race is really solid. It really changes though, especially through the first 10 laps, where as the tires warm up, the car goes from kind of loose on throttle to kind of tight on throttle. So with that in mind, you run about 25 to 30 laps, I believe, on a full tank of gas. So you're going to end up pushing on the right front a little bit more throughout the race. So if you want to have a really aggressive brake bias to try to get the most out of that right rear, or if you really want to rip the top side to try to get the most out of that right rear, that may be effective, but the setup may not be great for it. When you run the top of the track, if you've got a loose car, that can really allow you to get the most out of that right rear. But with how this setup kind of tightens as the run goes on, I feel like it's going to be really easy to just lean on that right front and burn it out really badly. There's not a whole lot of banking difference between the bottom and the top of the track, so it's going to be really difficult to get a whole lot more out of the car running the top line. That being said, if that's better for your car, especially if you're got a little bit of damage or if your tires are worn out in a slightly different way than mine, absolutely go for it. It's not a whole lot slower, it's just, I feel, not the optimum way to get around the track. I ran a full stint earlier today, and I wore out the right front about 20% more wear percentage than the right rear. And I was worried that I was going to have to protect the right rear with how it started out loose. So you don't have to protect the right rear. You're going to be okay to get that that tire out there and sliding a little bit for your time. As long as you don't overdo it, you'll be okay. If you start to overdo it, it'll get too hot and too worn, and then every time you come out of a corner, you can't help but stick it out and slide it, and then it just picks up more wear and picks up more temperature. And unless you want to run 2 or 3 laps way slower to get that right rear back in shape, there's not a whole lot you can really do. So if you're going to be aggressive, pick your time, pick your place, and don't do it after that. The racing line I like to take involves sort of a later apex on the turns than you think you might really need. Especially on 3 and 4, you got to be really patient as the tires wear to get low onto the corners. Missing your apex in 3 and 4 is actually not that bad. The second groove up has a little bit more banking, and the car kind of likes that with this setup. But with 1 and 2, it's very vital that you hit that white line. And setting your brake bias a little bit further back in the rear is going to help you with that. Help the car rotate down to it. I'm coming off the inside line of the turn later than you would expect. I keep saying that. You got to be patient. You got to come off later. That's really good for the tires. That really helps the tires stay in good shape, and it really helps you get the most off of every turn and be consistent. Instead of pushing everything that you can and having the car just slide out all the way to the wall with your wheel cocked 90 degrees left and burning up the tires. You stay fast, you stay consistent, and it keeps those tires alive throughout the whole stint. Alright, so one final thing to touch on is pit road entry. You can be really aggressive here at Auto Club. There's a lot of room and the banking isn't too severe. Change that front brake bias up to as far forward as it'll go so you have good stability on worn tires. Keep that speed a little low on the inside lane. Look for the white paint on the wall on the right there. As soon as you pass it, start braking. It's going to be right around the time that that line turns into a dotted line. And then you can slow down just perfectly in time to hit that pit road speed limit of 55. With the rear brake bias set up in this car, you got to start braking really early for your pit stall, or you'll lock up the rears, which really increases your stopping distance, and you'll slide through the box. Going a little bit slower into your pit stall might cost you 1/10 of a second. Sliding all the way through your pit stall is going to cost you 4 seconds. Alright guys, that was this week's Pacemaker video for Auto Club. Really excited to start this season with y'all. Get out there and race. Look forward to seeing you all in my rearview mirror.